Hello and welcome to At the 55, your home for OUA and perhaps U Sport football. Me and Tom are back on the mics after a little post Vanier Cup hiatus, taking a little break, but we're back with a special interview in celebration of that Vanier. We'll get you set up for that, but not before I say the words I've been longing to say for quite some time now. Tom, how the heck you doing, my friend?
Oh my God, when you have a special guest like we do here, how can I not be doing so fantastic? He is an All-Canadian. He is the RSEQ MVP. He was the Vanier Cup MVP, but most importantly, he is a two-time Vanier Cup champion for the Laval Rouge. Arnaud Desjardins, quarterback for that historic program, is here with us. Arnaud, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for the invite.
It is so fantastic to have you on. There's so much that we want to get to here with so much that we want to talk to, but first and foremost I want to ask, you've won the Vanier Cup this year. What's that been like from when you won to now?
Yeah, it's starting to sink in. Obviously, we had fun the past couple of weeks, but after a pretty good week of celebration, we're back to reality with our exams for the past week. So it's been a lot to handle, but we're having so much fun doing it. So we're just glad that we did what we did.
Arnaud, obviously, when you go to a program like Laval, and we certainly are going to ask about that journey for you getting there and what that must have been like, Tom brought to my attention that with Coach Glenn Constantine, he can pretty much tell a recruit, by the way, odds are in your favor that in your journey here with Laval, you will win probably at least one Vanier Cup. You're sitting at two, as Tom highlighted it. What is it like knowing that you're in a program where that is the expectation and anything but that, even when you're in a conference, duking it out with a team like Montreal just to make it out of the RCQ, knowing that that's the standard and it's a privilege to be able to get to play in those games, but it's a high bar to have to hit.
For sure. Well, we feel so lucky to be in that program. Obviously, I think that there never was a group of guys that never win at Laval. So every year they at least have one venue, which is nuts to think about. But for us, it's a reality, and obviously that adds a lot of pressure. So yeah, I was glad to have my first one pretty early on in my career, and now the second one feels even better.
Oh, outstanding. Well, going into your recruiting process here, your last year at CJEP, you go 138 completions for 200 or 208 attempts, around 66% completions, 33 touchdowns to just two interceptions. Obviously, a very highly touted recruit. What was your recruiting process like? Did you have a lot of schools reaching out to you? And in your head, was it anywhere else other than Laval, or did you know from the get-go that's where you wanted to go?
Yeah, well, it was a pretty good ride. I had a lot of teams reach out. Some from the OUA, the Western Mustangs, the Guelph Griffins, the Montreal Carabins, obviously. But yeah, we had such a good team on that 2019 CVM team. That's my CJIP. All of the guys either played at Montreal, at Laval, or in the States. So it was a lot of fun those years. But yeah, I ended up choosing Laval, and it definitely was the best choice for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I make the face because Arnaud, if you're unfamiliar, I played at the University of Guelph in the early 2010s, same time period that Tom was at McMaster. And Tom, the level of the Vanier Cup has duked it out with Yo Rouge, or we've both had the opportunity, though in different environments, to play Montreal in the national semifinal level and the Vanier Cup in Tom's time. So just hearing you mention the Guelph Griffins for me sends shivers down my spine, even though knowing it didn't come to fruition. But talking about the RSCQ, obviously the numbers you put up this year were so stellar. And I'm going to leave it to Tom to ask about your partner in crime, Olivier Cool, because, I don't think there's a bigger fan of Mr. Cool outside his own immediate family than Tom Sterling. But, when you follow U Sports football, you know that it's the classic example. RSCQ is the classic example of, offense sells seats, sells jerseys, but defense wins championships. And you go up against those defenses week after week. Obviously, last year, Montreal, that defense of theirs, had people talking in conversations that it was one of perhaps the greatest ones that there's ever been in U Sports. Your defense was no slouch this year at all, giving up less than two scores. Like, what is it like as a quarterback in a conference where everyone knows that, you can win a game 15-11, and that's a great job by you when you face defenses like you have to deal with in the RCQ and dealing with your own in practice day in day out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to me, it was a learning process. At first, I wasn't used to it. Playing with such a great defense, sometimes punting is not a bad play. And and you just gotta limit the turnovers and play with the field position sometimes. But yeah, so that was one of my one of the things that I had to learn. But yeah, playing with against great defense, Montreal a year ago was probably the best defense I've played. Even this year, they had a great defense. Concordia always has a good defense too. So I feel like it prepares us best for those matchups against the OUA, against the West, and yeah. So that's why we have so much consistency against those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the talent that you're playing against in the RCQ is bar none across the country. But I want to go back a little bit further here. So you signed with Laval. Obviously, the COVID year happens. 2020, there's no football. 2021, you're technically in your first year playing at Laval. What was it like running out of the tunnel the first time to 20,000 people cheering for Laval? That must have been a crazy experience.
It was. It sure was. You never know what to expect. You don't know how you're gonna feel until you actually feel it. So yeah, we're so lucky at Laval to have all those fans behind us. It can add a little bit of pressure too, but when you get used to it, it's an unbelievable feeling.
Now, Arnaud, we obviously are OUA first and foremost. We do our best coverage we can of the other leagues, especially when it gets to the U Sport playoffs. And Tom alluded to it. The crowds that come out for your games are second to none. It's something that we just clamor for to get more in Ontario for our matchups, our big time matchups. You have rivalries with teams like Montreal, all this glamour, and you grew up in the system of Quebec football, doing CEGEP. If you were to put it into a sentence or two, because clearly Quebec does football right. There's something going on there. I'm certain that, you don't want to be giving away too many trade secrets because, we're going to let everyone in Ontario know. But what are some of the things, because you've had experience, and we'll talk no doubt about your time spent in Winnipeg with the Blue Bombers at the CFL level with the internship program. Like, what are some of the things that you just feel like when you look at other provinces, your experiences around different clubs, CFL, other U Sport teams, that when you look at your home province in Quebec, you're like, this is where we do it better than anyone else?
I think there's a lot of things, obviously. First of all, Chris with Glenn Constantine, when he started, I mean, football in Quebec was nothing. And now across all CEGEP, at the CEGEP level, the high school level, it's pretty big, honestly. And obviously at Laval, all those fans, they feel like they belong to the program, and all the alumni is pretty big. We feel like sometimes at other schools, there's only a student section that comes out. Us, there's people of every generation that comes out, and they're so passionate about the game. And so that adds a lot to it. Guys want to play football, they want to play hockey, soccer, volleyball. But at the end of the day, when you see those crowds and when you see that environment, at a very young age, you want to play that sport, and that brings a lot of people to the game for sure.
Well, you mentioned it in there as well. One of the amazing aspects of Laval is not only having legendary coaches like Coach Glenn Constantine and everything he has done, but the alumni that is there. And one of the fantastic alumni that was on your coaching staff as well, Anthony Auclair, who is a Super Bowl champion, not just the Grey Cup champion, but a Super Bowl champion. Talk about what that was like for you to come into that. It was certainly Anthony Auclair and being incredible in that aspect, but Coach Glenn Constantine, like you said, he is the most winningest coach in all of U Sports history. And to have a coaching staff like he has, what was that like to you and helping you grow to the great quarterback that you are today?
Well, it's pretty nuts to think about. The guy has played with Tom Brady a couple of years, so it's pretty impressive. Obviously, he made a huge difference with us this year. We struggled in 2023. But this year he came in and we brought in some new plays. Just his overall attitude, his leadership. He's a very calm guy, so whenever something's wrong, you can always ask him, and he's been through pretty much everything in his career. So he's a huge piece now of our offense, and we're just so glad to have him.
and just one of the many great athletes, not just in the sport of football, but you mentioned hockey being a major sport out there. Anytime you tune into the Winter Olympics, obviously Quebec is producing athletes left, right, and center. And I don't recall if Tom mentioned this in reading your resume, because it's a rather long resume of awards and whatnot that you trot out there, Mr. Desjardins, but it includes winning the Quebec Athlete of the Year for this year, on top of all the amazing things that you've done. You think about whether it's someone like Auclair, someone like Matthew Betts, what he's doing, and all the other great contemporary athletes that you're competing with. Obviously, a guy like Jonathan Senecal. What does that mean to you to be your province's top athlete for this year?
Honestly, it means a lot, but that wasn't my objective. That wasn't my goal this year. As at Laval, the team always comes first, and we feel like we need to win a Vanier every year. If that comes along, obviously it's great. I'm so grateful for it. But still, I feel like you don't even got time to celebrate it, and you got a Dunsmore Cup the next day. So that was what my eyes were on, and I'm just so glad that we came up with the W.
So going into your own experiences now at Laval, you're the quarterback there, 2022 in particular. You start off very first start of the year. You are the starting quarterback as technically a second year young man. You play against Sherbrooke at home, and your stats in your very first game, 28 for 38, 308 yards, one touchdown, albeit the one interception as well. But not every second year quarterback is putting out numbers like that. Going into that very first game as a starter in there, is there any nerves going into you? Are you calm, cool, and collected? What's your thought process going into that and putting up 308 yards passing?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm obviously a pretty calm guy whenever I'm on the field, but what makes me even calmer is the guys that are around me. I don't know if you recall that team in 2022, but we had Kevin Vital, David Dallaire, and Nate Dumoulin-Duguay. I mean, just star players all over the field. So on my end, I just had to deliver and just play my game. But those guys are gonna make big plays for me. They're gonna block up front. So that's one of the benefits at Laval. I'm always playing with studs. Olivier Cool, you guys talked about him this year. But all over the field, the guys are just very good, and I just got to do my job.
And of course, that was in the route to winning your first Vanier Cup. And this is where I got to bring the Ontario piece into it, Arnaud, because when you add in Montreal winning the Vanier last year, also in Kingston, it's 3 Vanier Cups in a row that your league has won, all in Ontario. And I got to say, it hurts a little bit, man. I got to ask, from your perspective, from the team perspective, do you feel that rivalry because obviously you're playing, as you said, it's Vanier Cup or bust. That's where the goal is. So you get to play a lot of those cross-conference games that Tom and I, wish that we got more of outside of just that level of football, more just, whatever it might look like. Do you feel that rivalry, like lifting up a Vanier Cup in Western's house with them on the sidelines because y'all knocked them out the year before, going into Richardson Stadium, knocking out the Laurier Golden Hawks that everyone was talking about as us as much as anyone as being perhaps one of the most dominant teams we'd seen this century with that offense, and your defense shuts them down. You do the things needed to take them out. Is there an extra little boost? I'm sure you'd love to lift up that Vanier at home. Next year, it's obviously going to be in Regina, but is there something extra special being in Ontario and winning that one in those two?
For sure. Yeah. Back in 2022 against Western, Laval and Western always had a little rivalry. Honestly, they beat us in the Vanier in 2017. I wasn't there, but still, and the year after, Laval beat them in the Vanier still. So it was a pretty intense game. Obviously, we were down 17 to Zip, and just a great second half comeback on their turf. It just was an amazing feeling. And this year, against Laurier, with the pregame, that was a little weird, and then the intensity was off the charts from the get-go, and we just had so much fun out there in Kingston. It was a great event, very well organized, and we're just so glad to be a part of this, and came up with a win the 2 times.
Well, obviously, you guys are no strangers to outstanding rivalries here, because arguably the greatest rivalry in all of Canada happens oftentimes 3 times a year between the Laval Rouge and the Montreal Carabins. What's that rivalry like? Explaining that to somebody who's obviously not a part of that. What does that mean to you guys to get the victory over them? Obviously, it's typically the two of you who are fighting for that top spot, but already, what's that like?
Um, it's nuts to be honest. The fans make it crazy. When we're playing at their place, we're getting yelled all kinds of stuff. Same thing for them when they're at our place. So, yeah, it's a very intense game. Obviously, we don't like each other. The thing that makes it special is most of the guys that you're playing against, you either played against them in CJEP or played with them
Mhm.
in CJEP. So, it's personal, and those games always end up being a 1 point game, last drive, comeback or whatever it is. But it's not going to be a boring game, and you got to play till the last whistle. But we're so glad to be a part of it, honestly.
Well, and on the subject of rivalries, obviously that team rivalry is huge. But for you as an individual, especially at the quarterback position, you get to go up against Jonathan Senecal so many times. You've got to go into Evan Hillock's house and take out his Western Mustangs, as we talked about, beating Taylor Elgersma, having to beating a guy in Mason Nias for Saskatchewan in that Vanier Cup 2 years ago. You've played against some outstanding quarterbacks. Is there something like prideful and kind of that kind of collecting of pelts of being like, oh, add Elgersma to the wall of QBs I've knocked out in big games. Oh, there's Senecal next to him. There's Hillock. There's Nice. There's all these games. As a quarterback, do you feel that rivalry there with your fellow quarterbacks? Or, I mean, I'm sure it's all love at the end of the day, but does that get you going knowing how good the quarterback talent is across Canada?
For sure. Well, I'm so glad I played against all those guys. I've been playing against Joe for like the past 7, 8 years, so it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, and playing with against Taylor and Devani. Obviously, it's a team sport, so they're playing against a great defense, and I know it. And I play against a good team, obviously, every time. But I never see it as a battle of quarterback. It's a team sport. I got to do my job. They got to do their job. They play against my defense, which is obviously one of the best in the country, and I get to play against them there. So, but it always adds a little bit to it, and it's a lot of fun for sure.
And I think having this, obviously, you have a fantastic attitude when it comes to this game, and it comes to this, because it's more than just a one person, it's a team sport going into this. But to just build off of Zach's as well, we've seen that you and specifically you and Taylor, you had a couple of sessions at the quarterback movements together where you got to know each other, obviously on the same side in the East-West Bowl as well, and getting that experience. Did that mean just a little bit more knowing that you know Taylor that much, and especially with all the pregame that you heard was going on?
For sure. Well, yeah, I met Taylor at the East West a couple of months ago. We obviously talked to each other and then trained with Miles Gibbon, the QB movement, this summer. And we just told us straight up, yeah, you guys got to make it to the venue and play against each other. And that's what we did. And I was so glad it was Taylor. I wouldn't have it any other way. He's had such a great season. And to cap it off against him, I'm not going to lie, it feels pretty good. But yeah, it was such a great game, and I'm happy for him that he got the heck too.
And you guys are obviously part of such a special class of quarterbacks that we'll be talking about, no doubt, as we approach CFL draft season a few months to come. But it's been coming off the back of a couple generations of really strong quarterbacks that have been starting to perhaps shift that paradigm or that stigma of the Canadian quarterback when it comes to that next level. You had the experience of working with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for the CFL QB internship class last summer in 2023, if memory serves. When you're seeing some of these quarterbacks, again, just at least from the Ontario perspective, and probably the most prominent name, thinking of someone like Trey Ford, but all the great quarterbacks from Canada that have had those opportunities that seem to be more and more frequent, even if it's just for a cup of coffee, just seeing more of those names have opportunities. And you gain this opportunity with the Blue Bombers and seeing what's like at the next level. What does that mean to you as a Canadian quarterback? Feeling if you have the same feel that I do, that there's maybe a bit of a shift towards that perception of what a Canadian quarterback can do at the pro level.
For sure. Well, it's exciting, right? I feel like there's a little bit of an opening right now. Obviously, with Trey Ford doing what he does so well, and even a guy like Nathan Rourke, who would have won an MVP if he stayed the whole season 2 years ago. So it's very exciting. Obviously, I had a great time in Winnipeg, just getting reps with Zach Collaros, Drew Brown, which are obviously two great quarterbacks in this league, and I learned a lot. And I just feel like on the mental aspect, I could be a quarterback on this in this league. Obviously, the physical tools are pretty impressive on their end, but I feel like at some point I could compete with these guys. So I'm just looking for an opportunity, and if it ever comes, I'm gonna be glad to have it and jump on it.
Well, I think one of the biggest aspects of what makes a great quarterback and just a great player in general is growth. And you can see progressions and getting better and things. Obviously, 2022, first year as a starter, ends up pretty good for you. You win the Vanier Cup. 23, we saw I don't think your best season. I think that's fair to say. Certainly going into this year, there was a lot of question marks coming out of camp, and then you come back and you respond, and you were very, very impressive. To give the folks at home listening just a bit of an example here, in 23, your final stats in the regular season, 140 completions to 204 attempts, 68%. 1,763 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. To then this year, 75.9% completion percentage, 2,373 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. Talk about what went into this year that differed from 2023 and how you were really able to establish yourself. And I think one of the best aspects to really showcase that in 23, obviously, you're playing against the #1 defense, not only in the country, but potentially all time in Montreal. You throw 1 touchdown to, I believe, 6 interceptions. And this year completely flipped that over with 7 touchdown passes to 1 interception. What was that process like going into this year? Obviously, you mentioned the East-West Bowl and everything else, but that's a massive jump to make in just a single year.
For sure. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it was a pretty underwhelming season. After the 2022 season, we won a Vanier, obviously first team All Canadian. Had big expectations for myself, but the following year, it just didn't work as a year before, and I had to look myself in the mirror. I worked real hard with my teammates all off season long. And it ended up paying off right there at the start of August. And yeah, all the guys supported me. They never questioned me. And I'm so grateful for it because during those tough times, it was pretty rough. I had an off-season questioning myself. But to be back on top just feels even better right now. And, it's such an amazing feeling to have gone through all of this.
And clearly, Tom, read off the stats, whatever that was, you shook it off like it was nothing else. And, this year capping off with the Vanier Cup, so perfect. The battles you had with Montreal, winning out of the RSEQ. Then you go to face Can West, and it's to a number of folks' surprise, it's the Regina Rams coming up with that win out own Can West to set up that matchup. And for a lot of us going into that, we're thinking, oh my goodness. I mean, if we didn't have Laval already making their way to the Vanier, like put my life savings on that one. Those Regina Rams came out, gave y'all a game. You talk about playing great defenses out of the RSEQ. That Rams defense was legit. What was it that when you went out there, like what were some of the things that maybe they gave you some trouble with? Obviously, you come up big with the game-winning touchdown late, and it just felt like, oh, of course, they just get me and Tom are watching it together. We're like, oh my God, this is going to happen. You march the whole darn field like it's nobody's business. Like you're just in practice, just running your stuff. What was that experience like going out there? I'm certain you guys weren't looking past that team, but it just feels like the human nature thing of it. It's the team you don't expect to be meeting. To be fair to how the Can West broke down, you go out there and they give you a great fight. What was that game like for you?
Well, it was an amazing game. Obviously, they had a very, very good defense, and you don't play these guys all year round like you do Montreal or Concordia or whatever. So you watch the tape and you don't really know what to expect. And we knew that we were going to be a physical team, a big team on the defensive front. But not gonna lie, we were kind of surprised. They were a very good defense. Number 95 is just a monster. I'm not sure what his name is again, but man, what a player! And so we just got to Regina, a long week of traveling. we might feel a little bit tired, and then until that last drive, we just didn't get going in offense. And but all the guys stayed calm, our coaches stayed calm. We know that we've been through this a number of times now. I'm a fourth-year quarterback, so I feel like I've seen a lot of games pan out, and just was excited to be a part of this moment. And we just told each other that that was going to be a hell of a story, and I feel like it was.
I have to agree with that 100% because we were watching that game and around the 7 minute mark, 8 minute mark, Regina gets the ball and they drive the length of the field and he scored and it's 14-10. And obviously, like you mentioned, it was a tough show. It's tough to move that ball on that defense no matter what. But then immediately after that, the very next drive, you take the ball, you start at your own 25-yard line, and you drive the entire length of the field in what I think is probably the most impressive showcase of offense, just because of how methodical you guys were against a top-tier defense. And I know you just talked about that, staying calm, cool, and collected, and obviously just even speaking to you now, and obviously when you and I met in East West, I can tell that you're a calm, cool, and collected dude. But to look around at your other teammates and to say like, hey guys, we need this. This is our season right here. What's that process like? As you're going through that, is there ever like oh my God, we're doing this? Or is it just, no, this is business as usual and we're going to get this done?
Yeah, well, you almost kind of downplay it to your teammates. You don't want them to be too stressed out. So yeah, I mean, I was pretty calm. I just told myself that you've done it way too many times than to do it now. So and my coaches were in agreement with that. So our OC Coach Justin just called a great drive, and honestly, just great protection all drive long. And then our receivers made some big plays, some big catch at the end. And I'm just so glad that I'm playing with those guys because without them, honestly, we wouldn't have won that game. And Isaac Yada is one of our best receivers. Just makes a huge catch at the end for a touchdown, and it definitely was a fun one to celebrate. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, I bet.
Arnaud, it seems like over the years in the OUA and no doubt in the other conferences as well, there's started to be a bit more Quebec guys do their thing in CEGEP, then make their way to play in OUA clubs, Can West, AUS, no doubt many of whom are people you grew up playing with, friends of yours you mentioned as well, having a couple of those phone calls from some OUA schools. You obviously go against pretty well every other conference because you're playing in those high leverage games. If I'm right to assume that you probably have some of your friends, some of your boys growing up who went to play in some of the other conferences, what are some of the discussions that you have when it comes to talking about RSEQ football versus OUA football, Can West, AUS that just come up when you're with your guys who've made it into other conferences?
For sure. Well, yeah. Honestly, I almost ended up at Western. It was my second choice, but yeah, we just feel like that some of the guys want to learn English, which is definitely a plus for us in Quebec, and yeah, and maybe want to play a little faster, obviously, and win. If you want to go at Montreal, Laval, obviously, it's going to be a loaded roster, and you might have to wait a little bit more. As CJEP guys, we're a little bit older, so when you come down to the OUA, you might get a shot earlier on. But yeah, I still feel like the RSEQ is probably the one of the best leagues, if not the best. We got great talent across the board. Obviously, our rivalry in Montreal against Laval I don't feel like there's nothing like it in the whole country. And playing those games is just so fun. So if you get an opportunity to play it, I feel like everybody should do. But we are well aware that there's great football across the country, and every time we play against a Laurier team or a Western team or a Regina team or a Sask team, it's always a battle, and it's surprising to see how much talent there is across Canada in every of those conferences, and even at the East West. It was just such a fun time to see the guys from across the country battle with each other, and I'm just so glad that I've been part of it.
I think just quickly before I get into my next question here, I think while Western has a phenomenal quarterback in Evan Hillock, I think there's a few Western fans who might be a little sick to know that they almost had you go there as well. Oh my God, what a quarterback room that would have been. But talking about that, and obviously talking about how incredible the stadium is like and the atmosphere that you play at Laval every day, certainly on game days here. Going into this Vanier Cup that's relatively close to home, at least as close as you can get with an Ontario team here in Kingston. What was that experience like? Obviously, it's about half the amount of fans that you would expect, but the stadium itself and the atmosphere, and then just the entire week of the Vanier. What's that like going into that as a quarterback for Laval?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. Honestly, you've been working so hard for this moment all year long, and together is just such an amazing feeling. But you got to stay in the process, also. But I just feel like Queens have some of the best facilities in the country. Their stadium is amazing. It's so beautiful, and it was pretty packed out with some of our fans. But
Oh yeah.
your fans showed up too. They traveled, so it just was it added a little bit to the game, and yeah, it was a lot of fun playing it. And all week long, we feel like Queens did a great job organizing everything, giving us whatever we need, and even like shirts, gear, and we're just so grateful to them for that amazing experience.
Arnaud, so two questions. One's kind of a quick, silly one, being that when we were at the Vanier the year before and it was your rivals in Montreal there, it was quite apparent because they packed the house too. They cheer on the Carabin with the Allez les Bleus, Allez les Bleus. I didn't catch, though there were many Rouge or fan there, I didn't catch any type of fight song cheer from your fans. Is there an equivalent coming out of Laval, kind of like the Allez les Bleus?
Not really. Well, one of the traditions at Laval is the when that Sweet Carolina song comes out, the stadium goes nuts. But no, there's not really a chant like Montreal does. It's their thing, pretty much.
Fair enough. Well, the other question, I think it's kind of the last question I want to ask you about, Arnaud. Tom and I have talked about from our experiences playing OUA football about that feeling of making it past a conference championship and having to kind of recollect yourself from the emotional highs of building up in that year, taking out likely one of your big rivals, and now having to reset and say, okay, but now we're on to that next stage. I talk about my experience in 2015. We beat Western. We go into the Mitchell Bowl. We host Montreal. And frankly, I just don't think we were emotionally ready for it because we had been fighting to win that Yates Cup for so long. Tom's talked about his experiences winning those Vaniers and just how that kind of resets. For yourself, your first year starting that 2022 year, you make it to the top of the mountain. You have the bit of the dip last year. You're right back up there this year. As you said, it's always team success first. And so ultimately, this is my way of asking for yourself, thinking about this offseason, this preseason. How are you resetting the bar for yourself as far as what's that challenge? What's that next pelt you're adding to the wall? What's that thing? Obviously, repeating is as satisfying, no doubt. I mean, it's few and far between the number of teams that have accomplished that, and that might very well be it. But when you've reached that mountain top and you can say there's literally no one else here to take on, and you have the sole target on your back across all of Canada. What's that motivation? What are those conversations that you and some of your guys have in the locker room of saying, well, here's how we're going to be better for next year. Here's what we're chasing.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a hell of a challenge. Going back to back is not easy for sure. And we kind of saw it in 2023. We just feel like that we weren't necessarily ready for that challenge and we got a little bit surprised. But I learned from that, and there's definitely some things that I would have done differently back in 2023. And I feel like I can just tell all the guys in the locker room like what was the mistakes I made, was a mistake we made, and to be sure not to do it next year. I definitely feel like we don't have a complacent team, and that we're ready for that challenge, and that we still have that we're still hungry. And I don't know if you noticed, but it's a young team that we have. So,
we noticed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, some of the guys are still gonna grow from this past year and be even better next year. So it's exciting for us. And as far as myself, not many quarterbacks have won three, so it definitely be a great feeling. And to motivate me even more, I got the national combine coming up in a few months, so I'm sure it'll be a hell of an experience. So I'm still hungry, and I can't wait for the few challenges that are coming ahead.
Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the Vanier Cup as well. What Zach and I saw, something that we commented on, I'd love to hear if you're willing to share it with us, is obviously you're running for the most part a 3x2 set, 3 to the strong side, 2 to the backside, and you're hitting a whole lot on the backside. Lots of hold coverage on that boundary, especially. So lots of quick passes there, taking what you can get for sure. In my mind, are you just trying to draw that safety just a little bit to the backside so you can start hitting Olivier Cool on one-on-one coverage? Or what's the game plan going into that from a passing game standpoint?
Well, honestly, we wanted to be aggressive. We wanted to take shots, deep shots, but they just weren't there. Laurie did a great job of keeping everything in front of them. So I had to be patient and come back to my check down, which is a pretty good option when you got Mathieu Roy playing there. So, so I just kept feeding him the ball, but we wanted to hit deep post routes with Oliver, deep corner routes. But they were playing a lot of zone coverages and just wouldn't allow us to have them. So yeah, just being patient. That's what I feel like I did a lot better this year, and just come back underneath instead of being aggressive, and you don't really know how it's gonna end up. It might get tip pick, and that's the kind of plays that are gonna kill your team. So yeah, just being patient and taking it one play at a time, and coming back to like you said, the backside, the little routes, and take it one play at a time.
Now, I have to ask here as well. Obviously, Zach and I have been talking about this, and Laval not only winning Vanier Cups, but just how many times this program has been to the Vanier Cups. Are there any team traditions that you guys have when you get to a national championship? With so many other teams across the country, it's rare to ever get to one, but you guys get there so often. Do you have certain traditions as a team to get ready for this?
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, I don't know if you've noticed, but the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the toughest part to get there. So yeah, we all dye our hair and cut them, and then the night before we have a team meeting where and it's probably one of the it's probably the most fun events that I've been a part of. Just all the guys being grateful for what we've done for each other the past season, and it just sets the tone for the game the following day. And we feel like we're closer than ever and just ready to fight against whoever's on the field. So that's really fun, and definitely helps us out. But it helps when you got coaches that have been there for the 12th time. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a big factor for us.
We have to ask, like, on that point. We've obviously mentioned Coach Glenn Constantine and just if you, as you highlighted, giving him credit for really turning around Quebec football in large part with what he's done with this program. The track record speaks for itself. You've had incredible coaches there. That leadership from the top down is incredible. Just like, what is, like, give us a glimpse of what it's like to play for Coach Glenn Constantine.
Well, it's amazing. Obviously, like, he's the GOAT. I don't think there's any debate about it. He's been through everything, so there's never a situation that stresses him out a little bit more than others. Just a very calm figure out there. But yeah, so he deserves a lot of credit. But obviously, his staff has been the same for the past 25 years too. Our OC, Justin Etier, has been there from the beginning. DC, Marc Fortier, same thing. Was the starting quarterback the first year the program existed. So, sorry about that.
Quelles sont la date et l'heure de votre rendez-vous?
It was about time we got a little French on the program. There we go. Parlez-vous français, mon ami?
But yeah, so all the coaches have been there since the beginning. So there's a lot of continuity there. And I feel like that's the key to success for us. The same guys doing the same thing over and over, and never being complacent. So as a player, that's all you can ask for. And we're just so glad to be playing for them.
Mm-hmm. Now I wanted to ask this as well. Obviously, going up against practice, whenever you guys do 12-on-12s, I'm sure that you have certain times where it's first team offense against first team defense to really just try to get things going. From that standpoint, especially with watching as much as I did, from the most part, I saw your Laval defense plays a lot of cover zero, and they've got athletes there. And as a quarterback going into that, you're thinking, hey, I've got a guy like Olivier Cool and all the rest of your amazing receivers here. Cover zero, this is a dream come true. And then you see some of the guys that you're going up against on that defense, and certainly the athleticism and the defensive backs. but those linebackers and the defensive linemen who love to rush the quarterback and are real good doing it. What was that process like going up against your own defense and that kind of iron sharpening iron kind of mentality with that?
For sure. Well, those practices are so fun. Just going at it against my defense is one of the best feelings. They're just so good. And as an offense, we always wondered how many points we would put up against those guys. But yeah, they're very good. The thing is that as far as scheme goes, I don't feel like there's no one playing like us. Marc Feltier does just an amazing job disguising everything, and he's got so many coverages. So to me, I try to just stick to the process and not being disturbed by what they've shown up with on that particular play. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that all the guys on our team would agree that our practices are very intense, and which makes it a lot of fun, obviously.
And then you add in what Philippe Forteza does in that Vanier, adding in the 18 points. And I mean, you talk about a well-rounded team, and hey, it makes all the sense in the world why y'all end up right back there on that mountaintop year after year. Arnaud, I'll pass it back to Tom to wrap it up. Again, just from me personally, in a year where we got to speak with Taylor Elgersma to start the year, and here we are at the end of the football season speaking with you. What an absolute pleasure it is. How great it was to see you in that game. I'll be the first to say it hurt. I'm OUA first and foremost, but great football is great football, and it's genuinely a privilege to get to watch what you and your Rouge or do year in, year out. So just as my way of saying thank you for being just the great quarterback you are and bringing great football to Canada.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys, for the invite. Hey, I know it's an OUA podcast, but it was a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm grateful for the invite.
Yeah, you are an absolute pleasure to watch as well. I want to just echo Zach's thoughts here just a little bit. Obviously, having fantastic teammates like you have mentioned, a guy like Olivier Cool, Kevin Mattel, Matthew Roy, those are fantastic as well, but they need somebody to get them the ball, and I think you do a pretty damn good job of doing that, my friend. So it has been an absolute pleasure being able to watch you in 2022, starting things off, getting a chance to cover you myself at the East-West Bowl, and to see you back at the mountaintop here, and especially to win that Vanier Cup MVP as well. It was just so incredible. So congratulations to you, sir. It has been fantastic, like I said, to watch you play, and good luck to you in all next year.
Thanks a lot, guys, and thanks for everything that you do for our game. I feel like it's huge, and I'm sure that all the OUA guys especially appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate that. We're doing our best in a couple more months of Duolingo, and we might be covering the RSCQ with a little bit more consistency, but we're not there yet. But what a privilege it is to get to have you on the show, Arnaud. Tom, as an awesome job by you, as always. I'm certain we'll be talking about Mr. Desjardins as we get into the CFL Combine season, which is right around the corner. We have some more content coming your way in the near future. And if I may try a little French, I'll change our little sign-off as per usual. Nous serons ici pour vous à le 55. Arnaud, how'd that one come across?
Amazing.
There we go. We'll be right here at the 55.